I think PM has taken a consistent position that the solution to this conflict has to come through diplomacy. In fact, you may remember his famous statement in Samarkand in front of President Putin where he said this is not an era of war and that solutions have to be found peacefully.
ಇತ್ತೀಚೆಗಷ್ಟೇ ಅಮೆರಿಕ ಭೇಟಿ ವಿಷಯವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ನರೇಂದ್ರ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರನ್ನ ಹೊಗಳಿದ್ದ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಸಂಸದ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮೆಚ್ಚುಗೆಯ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ರಷ್ಯಾ ಯುಕ್ರೇನ್ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾತನಾಡಿರೋ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಈ ವಿಷಯವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ನಿಲುವನ್ನ ಮೆಚ್ಚಿಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಈ ಹಿಂದೆ ರಷ್ಯಾ ಯುಕ್ರೇನ್ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತ ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡ ನಿಲುವನ್ನ ವಿರೋಧಿಸಿದ್ದೆ. ಭಾರತ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ನಿಲುವನ್ನ ನಾನು ತಪ್ಪಾಗಿ ಭಾವಿಸಿದ್ದೆ. ಈಗ ನನಗೇ ಮುಜುಗರವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ರಷ್ಯಾ ಯುಕ್ರೇನ್ ಯುದ್ಧಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರು ತಳೆದ ನಿಲುವುಗಳು ಸ್ವಾಗತಾರ್ಹ. ಸಮಸ್ಯೆ ಪರಿಹಾರಕ್ಕೆ ರಾಜತಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ಮಾತುಕತೆಯೊಂದೇ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿರೋ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ನಿಲುವು ಮೆಚ್ಚುಗೆಗೆ ಅರ್ಹವಾಗಿದೆ. ರಷ್ಯಾ ಉಕ್ರೇನ್ ನಡುವೆ ಶಾಂತಿ ಸ್ಥಾಪನೆಗೆ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ಮೋದಿ ಮಾಡಿದ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನಗಳನ್ನ ಇಡೀ ಜಗತ್ತು ಮೆಚ್ಚಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ ಅಂತ ರೈಸಿನಾ ಸಂವಾದದಲ್ಲಿ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಮಾತನಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ರಷ್ಯಾ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷ ವ್ಲಾಡಿಮಿರ್ ಪುಟಿನ್ ಅವರನ್ನ ಉದ್ದೇಶಿಸಿ ಪ್ರಧಾನಿ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ಇದು ಯುದ್ಧದ ಯುಗವಲ್ಲ ಅನ್ನೋ ಹೇಳಿಕೆ ಜಾಗತಿಕ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲೂ ಮೆಚ್ಚುಗೆಗೆ ಪಾತ್ರವಾಗಿದೆ. ಮೋದಿ ಸದಾ ಜಾಗತಿಕ ಶಾಂತಿಯ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದು ಭಾರತದ ಕುರಿತು ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ವೇದಿಕೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಗೌರವ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣ ಅಂತ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಜಾಗತಿಕ ಶಾಂತಿಯನ್ನ ಕಾಪಾಡುವಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾರತ ನಡೆಸಿರೋ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನಗಳಿಗೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಇತಿಹಾಸ ಇದೆ. ಒಂದು ವೇಳೆ ರಷ್ಯಾ ಉಕ್ರೇನ್ ಯುದ್ಧದ ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಪಾಲುದಾರರು ಭಾರತವನ್ನ ಶಾಂತಿ ಮಾತುಕತೆ ಪ್ರಕ್ರಿಯೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಭಾಗಿಯಾಗುವಂತೆ ಆಹ್ವಾನಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಭಾರತ ಖಂಡಿತವಾಗಿಯೂ ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಂತನೆ ನಡೆಸುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ನಿಟ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸಕಾರಾತ್ಮಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ಪಂದಿಸುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ವಿಶ್ವಾಸ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಅವರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ಅಂತಾರಾಷ್ಟ್ರೀಯ ನಿಲುವುಗಳನ್ನ ಟೀಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ಗೆ ಈಗ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಹೇಳಿಕೆಯಿಂದ ನಿಜಕ್ಕೂ ಒಂದ್ ರೀತಿ ಮುಜುಗರ ಉಂಟಾಗೋ ಹಾಗಾಗಿದೆ. ಈ ಹಿಂದೆಯೇ ಮೋದಿ ಅವರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಹೊಗಳಿಕೆ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನಾಡಿದ್ದಕ್ಕೆ ಶಶಿ ತರೂರ್ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬಿಜೆಪಿಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಮಾತುಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಹರಿದಾಡಿದ್ವು. ಈಗ ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೋದಿಯನ್ನ ಹೊಗಳಿರೋದಕ್ಕೆ, ಅವರ ನಿಲುವುಗಳ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದ್ ರೀತಿ ಮೆಚ್ಚುಗೆಯನ್ನ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸ್ತಾ ಇರೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾಂಗ್ರೆಸ್ ನಾಯಕರು ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು? ರಾಹುಲ್ ಗಾಂಧಿ, ಮಲ್ಲಿಕಾರ್ಜುನ ಖರ್ಗೆ ಆದಿಯಾಗಿ ಯಾರೆಲ್ಲ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಈ ವಿಷಯಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಟ್ಟ ಹಾಗೆ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಕಾದು ನೋಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ.
Yeah, I think PM has taken a consistent position that the solution to this conflict has to come through diplomacy. In fact, you may remember his famous statement in Samarkand in front of President Putin where he said this is not an era of war and that solutions have to be found peacefully. We do seem to be at the beginning of a peace process of some sort. We know that President Trump and President Putin have spoken. We don't know what the outcome is. A peace process is a more complicated issue than just two leaders talking. There would need to be, first of all, the parties have to be involved. The Ukrainians will have to have a seat at the table. The European Union and the European countries in the neighborhood, which have been very actively involved in the conflict, they will demand and legitimately expect a seat at the table. There may be countries that will be invited to come in from outside to help maintain a peace. That becomes the issue. Are we talking about a ceasefire? Are we talking about a peace settlement? Are we talking about something that's a long drawn-out process that ends in a durable solution? Or are we talking about an immediate ceasefire with a stalemate on the ground without resolving the larger? None of this is clear. And it seems to me that for us to sit here and start speculating is not a very useful exercise. All of these options are there, but ultimately the principal actors are the ones with the guns on the ground and those who supply those guns. Let's be very honest. They are the ones who can decide the pace of any peace and how far it goes. So let's wait and see what comes out.
Prime Minister Modi is the one who has been to Russia. He has been to Ukraine. There has been.
Look, at this stage, I'm not aware of India having been asked to do anything. Clearly, President Trump has taken the lead in talking to the Russians about this. Until such time as a country like India is invited to be involved, I think we should just watch and wait. But I'm not in the government. I'm not privy to any private conversations that may or may not be happening. All I will say is that we have a very long record in peacekeeping. We've sent collectively in the last 75 years maybe 250,000 peacekeepers around the world, 49 operations, different parts, all far away from our country. So we have been available for constructive purposes of peace. But even then, it will all depend on what kind of agreement this is and what is required in policing it. I'm not saying that anybody would say yes just like that with a snap of the fingers. We would have to look at the details. And at this stage, I think we are, as far as I can tell, observing a process which is yet to play out. I think it's all speculation at this point. We really need to see what happens on the ground. There is a difference between a ceasefire and a peace settlement. There's a difference between a temporary cessation of hostilities and a long-term enduring settlement. We still don't know which way they're heading. Let's wait and watch. Well, look, I think it's a sense of relief we all have as human beings. No one has ever been that long stuck in space, and the fact that she's landed back on Earth is a matter of relief. She'll have to go through various medical tests and see how she's able to recover from this experience, because I'm told that such prolonged exposure to life in space can have an impact on everything from your bone density to your muscle mass to your blood, all sorts of features, and they'll be examining all that to see. But if all goes well, then we can rejoice that the world has learned something without planning to about how long human beings can endure in space and what the prospects are for extended stays in space and even possibly life in space. All of these are positive things. Obviously, the fact that she's a member of our diaspora, even though she wasn't born here or raised here, but she was somebody with a connection to our country, adds a special dimension of satisfaction at her successful return.
Given the state of play right now with Russia and Ukraine and this conflict and President Trump's position, are you glad that India took the position it did? I mean, it carried on buying Russian oil and gas, for example.
Yes, I'm still wiping the egg off my face because I was the one person in the parliamentary debate who actually criticized the Indian position at the time, back in February 22, on the well-worn grounds that Espen will understand, because he and I talked about all this in my UN days, that there was a violation of the UN Charter, that there had been a violation of the principle of the inviolability of borders, of the sovereignty of a member state, namely Ukraine, and we had always stood for the inadmissibility of the use of force to settle international disputes, and all of those principles, I said, had been violated by one party, and we should have condemned it. Well, a couple of years later, 3 years later, it does look like I'm the one with egg on my face, because clearly the policy has meant that India has actually a prime minister who can hug both the president of Ukraine and the president of Moscow 2 weeks apart and be accepted in both places. And therefore, India is in a position where it can make a difference to a lasting peace, if it was so required, in ways that very few countries would be able to. And it's partially, I mean, again, going back to some of the things that Stephen Harper and Espen said, distance helps. The fact that we're not in Europe and we're not directly one way or the other threatened or benefiting from any change in territorial borders, for example. That helps. The fact that the two parties seem to be ready to agree to peace. The fact that there would presumably be some very serious international backing for an international peacekeeping venture. I mean, all of those things have to be borne in mind before you answer the question that you just asked, Yella. As an Indian government a person making such a decision, those considerations would really have to be uppermost before they say yes or no. But I can see it entirely possible that in these circumstances India would say